I never thought I'd be a father. Not because I didn't want to be, but because life just didn't unfold that way. I built a business from scratch in my 20s, ran it hard through my 30s, and by 41, I had a house with more rooms than I knew what to do with, money I didn't really care to flaunt, and a silence that settled in my home like dust, quiet, consistent, impossible to ignore. I remember sitting on the back porch one evening, drink in hand, the sunset bleeding orange over the fence, and thinking, so this is it? I wasn't lonely in the desperate sense. I had friends, dates, hobbies, but there was something hollow about it all, something incomplete. That's when the idea first took root, not a fleeting thought, but a real, tangible want. I wanted to give what I had to someone who needed it. Not just money, not charity, something more permanent, more meaningful. I wanted a daughter, not a baby, not a toddler, but a teenage girl who might otherwise fall through the cracks, just like I almost had. Her name was Mariah, 15 when I met her, 17 when I signed the papers, and 18 when all of this truly began to unravel. But back then, when she first walked into my life, she was all guarded eyes and folded arms, sitting stiff in the office chair at the agency, staring at me like I was just another temporary face. And I don't blame her. She'd been bounced around too many times, had too many new homes that lasted all of 6 months before someone gave up. I remember the first conversation we had. I told her, I don't want to fix you. I just want to be here if you need someone. Her response? A shrug. No smile. No warmth. But she didn't walk out. That was something. And over time, it grew into more. A shared routine. Dinner at the table. Her laughter, rare, but real, echoing through the halls. I was careful. I didn't push. I didn't pry. I just showed up, again and again, hoping she'd see that I wasn't going anywhere. I bought her first laptop, took her on weekend trips, helped her catch up in school. When she had nightmares, I stayed up and made her tea. When she missed her mom, who'd been in and out of prison, I didn't compete with that grief. I just sat with it, held space for it. Every parent-child relationship has growing pains, but when the bond is forged through choice instead of blood, everything feels a little more fragile. I told myself that love would fill in the cracks, that eventually, she'd see me not as a replacement, but as something steady. Maybe not dad, but someone who could be counted on, someone who chose her on purpose. And honestly, for a while, it seemed to be working. She called me Pops one afternoon without thinking, and my heart nearly caved in on itself. We built traditions, Sunday morning pancakes, late-night horror movies, arguing over who got the AUX cord in the car. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And I let myself believe, stupidly, maybe, that it would last. Her 18th birthday felt like a milestone for both of us. She was finally an adult. No more caseworkers. No more state involvement. Just us, a family by choice, no qualifiers attached. I wanted to celebrate her, to show her how proud I was. Not just of who she was becoming, but how far we'd both come. I planned a big party, invited some of her friends from school, even reached out to a few of her old mentors from past programs. I spent weeks picking out the right car, something reliable, safe, not too flashy, but not boring either. A deep blue Toyota Corolla with low miles and a custom stereo, because she loved her music loud. I imagined the look on her face when she saw it. That moment where everything would click. She'd see the car, think about the years we'd spent building something real, and maybe, just maybe, she'd feel what I felt. That we were, finally, solid. The morning of the party, she barely said 2 words to me. But I chalked it up to nerves, or maybe surprise. Teenagers are moody, I reminded myself. It doesn't mean anything. I spent the whole afternoon setting up the backyard, balloons, fairy lights, a rented canopy in case it rained. I grilled burgers, stocked the fridge with soda, played her favorite playlists. When she arrived with her friends, I caught a glimpse of her smiling, laughing, dancing a little to the beat. And my heart swelled with a quiet kind of pride, the kind you don't say out loud, because it feels too sacred. I didn't need her to say thank you, or give a big emotional speech. I just needed her to feel loved. That would have been enough. When it was time for gifts, I handed her the car keys in a small, black velvet box. She opened it slowly, then stared up at me with wide eyes. You didn't, she said. I smiled. Go check the driveway. She ran out, and for a moment, just one fleeting moment, I saw the girl I thought I knew. The one who used to make me pancakes when I was too tired, who left sticky notes on the fridge with doodles of frogs and suns. She squealed, hugged her friends, jumped up and down. But when she came back inside, everything changed. Maybe someone said something. Maybe the moment just wore off. She sat across from me at the dinner table, cake half eaten, and locked eyes with me in a way that made my stomach twist. "You know," she said, loud enough for the room to go quiet, "you were never really my dad. Just some man who wanted to feel important." The words sliced through me like cold glass. There was no anger in her voice, just indifference. Detached, like she was reading off a script. The people around us froze. Some glanced away, others stared, waiting to see what I'd say. But I didn't say anything. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask her why. I just nodded slowly, pushed my chair back, and walked out of the room. No drama. No fight. Just a decision. A clean cut. And in that moment, something in me shut off. Not love, but access. The years I'd spent trying to be enough. To be seen, respected, appreciated, collapsed under the weight of that one sentence. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that something irreversible had happened. The girl I chose didn't choose me back. I sat in my truck for almost an hour after leaving the party. Not driving, not thinking, just sitting, hands on the steering wheel, heart quiet in that dangerous way, like the calm just before a storm breaks loose. The backyard lights still glowed through the windows. I could hear faint music drifting through the breeze and the laughter of teenagers echoing like ghosts across the lawn. But it all felt far away now, like a scene from someone else's life. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror and didn't see a father. I saw a fool, a man who mistook proximity for connection, a man who thought love was enough to make someone stay. Her words, delivered so casually, so publicly, played over and over in my mind. "You were never really my dad. Just some man who wanted to feel important." Not angry, not hurt, just dismissive. And it was that cold indifference that cut deeper than any outburst could have. I tried to justify it at first. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she was embarrassed. Maybe one of her friends whispered something into her ear that made her say it. But then I caught myself, doing what I always did when she pushed too far, making excuses, rewriting her behavior into something I could live with. I'd done it for years, always assuming her trauma was the culprit, always giving her space, patience, grace. And maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I should have called her out the first time she rolled her eyes when I reminded her of curfew, or the time she slammed her door and said, "You're not even real family," back when she was 16. I let it slide. I let everything slide, because I was afraid that pushing back would make her leave. But tonight, I realized she'd never really been with me to begin with. Not in the way that counted. Not in the way I had hoped. When I finally turned the key in the ignition and backed out of the driveway, I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just done. Tired in the way that makes your bones ache. I drove to the dealership where I bought her car, a place that had stayed open late by special request so I could pick it up that morning. The salesman recognized me as I pulled in. "Hey, back so soon," he joked, eyes glancing toward the car. I didn't laugh. I handed him the keys. "Sell it. I'll take the hit on depreciation." He blinked, confused. "Is everything okay?" I looked him in the eye. "Yeah, I just came to my senses." That car wasn't a gift. It was a symbol of a contract I thought we had, one she clearly never signed. And I wasn't going to let it sit in my driveway like a monument to my own delusion. By the time I got home, the party had wound down. The music was off, the lights dimmed, and her friends had either left or were passed out in sleeping bags in the basement. I walked through the house like a guest, quiet, deliberate, emotionally detached. I opened her bedroom door and stared at the mess inside. Clothes on the floor, makeup scattered across the dresser, the faint smell of perfume and teenage rebellion lingering in the air. I stood there for a long time, remembering the night I painted that room for her. She had picked the color, a deep lavender, and I spent hours taping the edges, making it perfect. She hated it a week later, said it was too babyish. I offered to repaint. She told me not to bother. It's not like I'm staying here forever anyway. At the time, I brushed it off. Now it echoed louder than ever. I went to my office, logged into the bank, and froze her credit cards. Nothing dramatic, just a clean suspension of access. The same way you'd lock a door after someone walks out without saying goodbye. Then I contacted the storage company and ordered a set of moving boxes. I didn't pack her things with anger. I folded her clothes neatly, separated the toiletries from the shoes, wrapped her glass trinkets in bubble wrap. It wasn't revenge. It was closure. A signal to myself that I wasn't going to beg to be disrespected in my own home. Every sock, every book, every random hair tie shoved between couch cushions, it all went into the boxes. And when I taped the last one shut, I sat on the floor and let the silence settle around me like a second skin. No tears, no rage, just clarity. She came upstairs around 2 a.m., rubbing her eyes, still half drunk from whatever sugary cocktails her friends had snuck in. She looked at the boxes, then at me. "What is all this?" she asked, voice hoarse. I didn't get up. I didn't offer her water or a blanket. I just said, "You don't live here anymore, Mariah." Her face twisted in confusion, then annoyance. "Are you serious?" I nodded. "Very." She scoffed, arms crossed. "So you're kicking me out over a joke? Jesus, grow up." I stood then. Not fast, not threatening, just firm. "It wasn't a joke, Mariah. It was the truth. Yours, not mine. And I'm finally listening." The argument that followed was short and venomous. She called me manipulative, accused me of controlling her with money, said I never really cared, that I just wanted to feel like a hero. And for a second, just a second, I saw the scared girl underneath all that bluster. But I didn't reach for her. I didn't try to fix it. I let the words hang there. Let them burn the air between us. Because I wasn't going to argue my worth anymore. Not to someone who saw generosity as leverage instead of love. She slept on the couch that night. Or maybe she didn't sleep at all. I didn't ask. In the morning, I had a rideshare take her to her cousin's apartment across town. One of the few biological relatives she still had. I paid for the first month's rent and left the boxes by the door. She stood there, glaring at me like I'd failed her. Like I was abandoning her. But the truth was, I had shown up again and again. I just wasn't going to stand there anymore while she spit on everything I tried to give. As she got in the car, she didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. And neither did I. The morning after she left, the house felt too quiet, too still in a way that wasn't peaceful, just empty. I stood in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, staring at the dent in the floor where she once dropped her speaker, the faint pink nail polish still smeared on the countertop, the shoes she used to leave in the hallway even though I asked her 1,000 times not to. And for the first time in years, I didn't have to ask anymore. There were no slammed doors, no blaring music, no dishes left in the sink overnight, just silence. I should have felt relief, and maybe part of me did. But mostly, I felt the slow, aching realization that I had poured years of my life into someone who saw my presence as optional and my love as disposable. That stung deeper than I expected. Not because I thought parenting came with guarantees, but because I thought she and I had built something real. By noon, I was back in my office, sorting through the loose ends that came with severing a life so intertwined. I made calls to her school, to her health insurance provider, to the company where I'd listed her as an emergency contact. I removed her name from everything: car insurance, gym membership, even the family phone plan. It was tedious, bureaucratic, and strangely intimate, like erasing someone from a digital life file. Each click felt heavier than the last. Not out of spite, but out of finality. I wasn't punishing her. I was accepting the truth she'd finally spoken aloud. I was never her real dad. I was just some man trying to feel important. And if that's how she saw me, after everything, I owed it to myself to stop pretending I was anything else. The most painful part wasn't freezing the credit or returning the car. It was going into the family photo album on my computer and dragging her pictures into a separate folder. I didn't delete them. I couldn't. But I couldn't keep seeing her face next to mine at Disneyland, or on the beach at Myrtle, or hugging me on the front porch after she got her driver's license. Those moments felt sacred once. Now they felt borrowed. Like I'd been living inside a version of her she never agreed to be. I stared at one picture for nearly 10 minutes. Her 16th birthday. We were sitting on the couch, cake on our laps, frosting on her nose, and she was laughing so hard her eyes crinkled shut. I remember thinking that day, this is what family feels like. I guess I was wrong. That weekend, I went to the storage unit I'd reserved. I dropped off her boxes, labeled and organized, along with a check for a 6-month rental. I left a note taped to the top box. It said, simply, "I loved you the best way I knew how. I hope someday you understand that." I didn't sign it. I figured she'd know who it was from. Or maybe she wouldn't care. Either way, I wasn't going to send her into the world with nothing. I had no interest in revenge. But I also wasn't going to bankroll someone who couldn't look me in the eye and see a father, not even in the barest sense. Love may be unconditional, but access is not. A few days later, I got a call from her cousin, Tasha, who was letting her crash for a while. She sounded conflicted, like she didn't want to pick sides. "She's mad," she said softly. "She thinks you cut her off to prove a point." I let out a long breath. "No," I said. "I cut her off because she made it clear she never saw me as family. I just stopped pretending." Tasha was quiet for a moment, then said, "She's hurting." I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "So am I." We hung up without resolving anything. And honestly, there wasn't anything to resolve. What was broken wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a mismatch of intentions. I showed up to love someone. She showed up to survive. That distinction changes everything. That week, I had to explain her absence to a few mutual acquaintances, people at church, neighbors who had seen us together, teachers I'd grown close with over the years. I kept it vague. "She's moved on to a new chapter," I'd say. "We're giving each other space." Most people nodded politely. A few pressed harder. One woman, a retired counselor who volunteered at the local youth center, gave me a look that lingered too long. "Teenagers say cruel things they don't always mean," she offered. I smiled tightly. She didn't say it to get a reaction. She said it like it was a fact. The woman blinked, then nodded slowly, like she finally understood. Because that's what made it different. If Mariah had screamed it in a fit of rage, I might have chalked it up to emotions. But she didn't scream. She stated it. Calm, clear, unwavering. That kind of clarity deserves a response of equal weight. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name on the envelope. Inside, it was 2 pages, mostly angry scribbles. Accusations. "You never understood me. You tried to buy me. You wanted a perfect daughter, and I was never going to be that." I read every word. Twice. And in between the lines, I saw it. The pain, the fear, the deep belief that love always comes with conditions. She didn't trust me. Maybe she never had. And maybe, in some small way, I hadn't fully earned it. I wanted to fix things too quickly, to make it all better without sitting long enough in her mess. But even if I made mistakes, I never withheld love. I just finally withheld access. I didn't write back. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't want to re-enter a relationship built on imbalance. If she wanted to talk, not argue, not accuse, but talk, I'd be there. But not before. Not when my role was still just some man in her eyes. I wasn't desperate to be needed anymore. I was only interested in being chosen. And if that never happened, I'd live with it. Not bitter. Not closed off. Just honest. I had nothing left to prove. And sometimes, that's the only peace you get. It wasn't until a month later that she showed up again. No call. No text. Just the sound of a knock on the front door one Sunday afternoon. Firm, steady, like she wasn't afraid of being turned away. I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard it, and I paused mid-fold, staring at the door like it might open itself. I didn't move at first, just listened. The knock came again, followed by a sharp voice I hadn't heard since that night. "I know you're in there." And I was, but I wasn't sure I wanted to be, not in that moment, not in that role anymore. Still, I walked to the door, opened it, and there she was. Mariah. Same dark hoodie she always wore when she was angry, hair pulled back like she didn't care, eyes hard but rimmed red. Behind her stood Tasha, arms folded, not saying a word, just watching. "What do you want?" I asked, not cold, but not welcoming either. She stared at me, jaw clenched, then stepped forward like she thought she still had that kind of permission. I didn't move. She stopped short, glaring. "I want my stuff," she snapped. "I know you boxed everything up. I want it now." I blinked, steadying myself. "It's in storage," I said. "I sent you the unit number. You have access through January." She rolled her eyes. "So I have to go beg some storage guy for my things now." I nodded. If that's what you call adulting, sure. Her eyes flared. You're unbelievable. I folded my arms. No, Mariah. I'm consistent. You don't get to insult me, walk out, and then act like nothing happened. Tasha shifted then, stepping between us. Okay, she said. Maybe this was a bad idea. But Mariah wasn't done. She stepped forward again, closer this time. You think you're so noble, don't you? Like you're the hero in this whole thing. That was the moment I felt something snap. Not anger, but exhaustion. Pure, bone-deep exhaustion. I had spent years walking on eggshells around her pain, around her trauma, trying to love her in ways that wouldn't trigger her defenses. I absorbed the silent treatments, the cold shoulders, the cutting remarks. I let her rewrite the narrative so many times I lost track of who was actually doing the hurting. But this wasn't about love anymore. This was about entitlement, about a girl who had come to believe that someone else's hard work, generosity, and loyalty were just things she could collect like hand-me-downs. I didn't raise her to be like that. But maybe, unintentionally, I helped create it by never saying no soon enough. I never claimed to be a hero, I said quietly. But I was good to you. And you threw it away like it was nothing. Her lip curled. You think buying me a car makes you a good dad? I leaned against the doorframe, meeting her glare. No, I think standing by you when no one else did makes me one. But you're right. Cars don't prove love. So I took it back. She scoffed. You're so pathetic. You couldn't handle a teenager being mad at you. I tilted my head. There's a difference between being mad and being cruel, Mariah. You crossed it. And now you're just learning that actions have consequences. Tasha touched her arm gently, trying to ease her back. Let's go, she murmured. But Mariah shook her off. He doesn't get to win. That word, win, landed heavier than anything else she said. Because that was the problem, wasn't it? She saw our relationship as a competition. A game where she lost control the moment I stopped funding her rebellion. I studied her face for a moment, wondering when exactly it had changed. When she'd stopped seeing me as someone safe and started seeing me as an obstacle. Maybe she never really stopped. Maybe she just got better at pretending. I didn't know anymore. And honestly, it didn't matter. I'm not trying to win anything, I said. I'm trying to heal from something that damn near broke me. She rolled her eyes, but I didn't stop. You think this was easy for me? You think I don't sit in that house and remember every little moment where I thought we were making progress? Every laugh, every joke, every meal we cooked together? I gave you everything I had. Not money, not stuff. Me. And you looked me dead in the eye and told me I was just some man. My voice cracked then, just a little. Enough for her to hear it. Enough to shake the smug off her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but Tasha cut in, firm now. That's enough, she said to Mariah. You said your piece. He said his. Let's go. For a moment, Mariah looked like she might argue. But something in my face must have registered differently this time. Finality, maybe. The end of my rope. Because she turned without another word, storming off toward the sidewalk. Tasha lingered. I don't agree with everything you did, she said gently. But I get it now. She's not ready. I nodded, lips tight. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was just trying to be present. Tasha gave me a sad little smile. That's more than she's ever had. She just doesn't know what to do with it. When they left, I didn't go back to folding laundry. I didn't do anything. I just stood there in the doorway, staring at the empty porch, trying to figure out how we got here. How two people who once built gingerbread houses together at Christmas were now throwing emotional daggers across a threshold. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. Because as much as I needed to hold my boundary, it didn't make the ache disappear. It didn't erase the memories of her asleep on the couch with her head on my shoulder, or the way she used to call out for me when she was sick. It didn't undo the love. But love without respect is just self-harm in disguise. That night, I finally replied to her letter. I didn't write much, just a few lines. You were never expected to be perfect. Just honest. I showed up for you because I wanted to, not because I needed applause. But I can't be the only one showing up. When you're ready to meet me halfway, I'll be here. Until then, take care of yourself. I folded it, sealed it, and dropped it in the mailbox. No expectations. Just clarity. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors that swing both ways, for those who knock with respect. It was a week later when the call came, not from Mariah, but from her school counselor, Mrs. Reed. A calm, level-headed woman I'd worked with several times back when Mariah was still attending classes regularly and we were navigating her transition into the new school. She had always treated me like a parent, never a placeholder, and that mattered more to me than I ever told her. Her voice on the phone was soft but urgent. "She's not doing well," she said, skipping any small talk. "She's lashing out in class, skipping after-school programs, and getting into shouting matches with staff. I know you two had a falling out, but I thought you should know." I rubbed my temples, letting out a sigh. She made her feelings about me pretty clear. There was a pause. "And yet," Mrs. Reed said carefully, "you're the only one she ever mentioned when things got hard. Like it or not, you left an imprint." That word, imprint, sat with me long after I hung up. I didn't know what Mrs. Reed wanted from me. I don't even think she knew. Maybe just to let me carry a piece of the weight. Or maybe she hoped I'd rush in, play the hero one more time. But I wasn't that man anymore. I couldn't be. Not after what it cost me. Still, I sat with the thought. Not because I wanted to fix it, but because I needed to decide if reaching out again would be kindness or cruelty for both of us. By the third day, I decided I wouldn't call. Not because I was punishing her. Because I wasn't a revolving door. I'd left one open window, and if she wanted to crawl through it, that was up to her. But I wasn't going to carry her over the threshold anymore. Then came the voicemail. I was out getting groceries when it hit my phone. An unknown number I nearly ignored. Something told me to check it. I stood in the parking lot, one hand on the cart, and pressed play. Her voice was shaky, uneven. "I don't know why I called. I'm not even sure you'll listen to this. But I'm sorry. I think. I don't know. I didn't mean to hurt you like that. I just didn't know what else to say. I thought if I pushed you away, you'd stop expecting me to be something I'm not. And now I don't know what I am." She paused, then whispered, "I miss the pancakes." The line went silent. Then she hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't rush home. I just stood there in that parking lot, surrounded by people living ordinary lives, holding a phone that suddenly weighed too much. Because that's what she never understood, how heavy it is to carry hope after it's been broken. I knew better than to take one voicemail as transformation. This wasn't a happy ending. It was just a moment. A flicker. But it was the first time I heard her speak without fire in her voice. And that was something. Enough to get me thinking. Enough to start planning one last goodbye. A few days later, I drove to the apartment where she was staying. I didn't tell her I was coming. I didn't even knock. I just left a note in her mailbox and waited in the car until I saw her pick it up. The note said, "One last ride. Tomorrow. 4 p.m. If you want to come, be outside. If not, I'll know." I didn't offer an explanation. I wasn't trying to bribe her into closure. I just needed one last face-to-face moment. Somewhere quiet, somewhere neutral, so I could say what needed saying and leave the rest behind. The next day, I pulled up in my truck at 3:59. I didn't expect her to be there. And for a long minute, she wasn't. I stared at the clock, watched the minutes tick. But at 4:03, the front door opened. She walked out slowly, hands shoved in her jacket pockets, chin tucked low. She didn't wave, just opened the passenger door and slid in without a word. We drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. I didn't ask where she wanted to go. I just took the highway out toward the lake, a spot we used to visit during calmer times, back when she still let herself be a kid. When we arrived, I parked at the overlook, engine off, and let the quiet settle between us. She was the first to speak. "So what is this?" Her voice was thin, uncertain. I looked out at the water, then at her. "This is goodbye," I said. "Not forever, but for now." She flinched, just slightly. "You're really done with me?" I shook my head. "No. I'm done chasing someone who doesn't want to be caught. There's a difference." She looked down at her lap, picking at her nails. I didn't mean it, the thing I said. I was just scared, I guess. "I didn't think you'd actually leave." I exhaled slowly. "That's the problem, Mariah. You thought love meant staying no matter how many times you hit below the belt. That's not love. That's codependence." Her eyes welled, and she blinked fast, wiping at her face like it embarrassed her. "I didn't know how to let someone stay. Every time you showed up, it just made me panic. Like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop." I nodded. "So you dropped it yourself?" She nodded back. "I always do." We sat in that truth for a while. Not arguing. Not fixing. Just acknowledging the mess. Eventually, I reached into the glove box and pulled out an envelope. This is a bus pass, a prepaid phone card, some info about a job fair next week. You don't have to take it, but if you want to stop burning bridges, it's a start. She took the envelope, hands trembling slightly. Why are you still helping me? I met her eyes. Because I loved you. And because helping doesn't always mean holding on. She looked away, eyes brimming. So that's it. I nodded. For now, I'll be around. But you have to want better. I can't want it for you anymore. We didn't hug. We didn't cry together. She just opened the door, stepped out, and stood there for a minute, like she wanted to say something else but didn't have the words. Then she shut the door, and I drove away without looking back. Because I knew if I did, I might break my own boundary. And I'd done too much work to betray myself now. It's strange how a house changes once someone leaves. Not just the sounds or the routines, but the energy, the feeling that lingers in the corners of rooms and the space between footsteps. The day after that last drive with Mariah, I walked through the house slower than usual, taking inventory of things that didn't just belong to her, but to us. The old picture frame still sitting crooked on the mantel where she once leaned against it too hard. The dented cabinet door from the time she slammed it after a bad math grade. Even the chipped coffee mug with a frog on it. Her favorite. I hadn't thrown it away. I just stopped using it. I didn't realize until then how much I'd reshaped my entire home, my daily rhythm, around her presence. Now, I was reclaiming it. Not with bitterness, not even with regret. Just intention. Just truth. Because that home wasn't just mine again, it had always been mine. I just forgot how to live in it alone. I started with her room. The boxes had long since been taken to storage, but the shell of her still clung to the lavender walls. The posters were gone, but the tape marks remained. The window blinds were slightly crooked. She broke them the week she moved in, and I never bothered to fix them because it made her laugh. I stood in the doorway with a paint roller and a can of eggshell white, staring at the wall like it might yell at me for moving on. I didn't play music. Didn't call a friend to help. I painted alone, stroke by stroke, watching the color bleed away, watching a piece of that chapter seal itself behind fresh layers. It wasn't erasure. It was evolution. I wasn't pretending she hadn't been there. I was just deciding she wouldn't define the space anymore. That weekend, I invited my friend Marcus over, the same guy who had helped me furnish the place back when I first bought it. We stood in the kitchen, beers in hand, and he gave me a long, quiet look. You seem lighter, he said. I shrugged. Not lighter, just less tangled. He nodded. That girl, you really tried, man. I didn't respond right away, just leaned against the counter, remembering the early days, how hopeful I was. I didn't adopt her to fix her, I said finally. I adopted her because I thought she deserved someone who wouldn't leave. Marcus tilted his head. And you didn't. No, I agreed. But she left anyway. Just took longer than most. He clinked his bottle against mine and said, Still proud of you, though. A lot of people would have made it about ego. You made it about dignity. The next morning, I donated some of her leftover clothes, the ones she'd outgrown or hadn't wanted back. I dropped them off at a shelter 2 towns over, the same one she used to volunteer at when we were still trying to build routine. One of the workers recognized me. You're Mariah's dad, right? He asked with a smile. I hesitated, just for a second, then nodded. Yeah, I said. I was. He didn't press, just accepted the donation and thanked me. And I realized in that moment that I didn't need a title to know what I gave her. I was a father, even if it wasn't forever. Even if she didn't say thank you. I showed up. I loved. I let go when I needed to. That's more than most get. Weeks passed. Then months. I didn't hear from her. The envelope I gave her with the bus pass and job fair info. I never asked if she used it. I didn't check the storage unit. I didn't contact Tasha. I let the silence do what it does best, reveal what was real and what wasn't. I still thought about her, of course. Every time I saw a girl her age with headphones in, bobbing her head to music on the bus. Every time I passed the frozen waffle aisle. Little things. But not with pain. With acceptance. I could hold space for what she meant to me without letting it reopen the wound. That's what healing looked like now. Not forgetting, but no longer bleeding. Then, one morning, I found a letter on the porch. No postage. Just folded neatly under the welcome mat. My name written in messy, familiar handwriting. I sat on the steps to read it. It wasn't long. Just 2 paragraphs. She wrote, "I don't know if I'll ever be ready to be the kind of daughter you deserved, but I'm starting to understand what you tried to do for me. I don't think I hated you. I think I was afraid you'd stop loving me if I showed you who I really was. And then I pushed too far. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know I see it now. I see you." I didn't cry, but my hands shook a little as I folded the letter and placed it inside the old frog mug, now sitting on a shelf in the garage. Not because I needed to hold on to her words, but because, finally, they weren't weapons. They weren't excuses. They were acknowledgement. And that was enough. I didn't reach out. Not yet. I didn't know what would come next, or if anything would. But I knew, deep down, that I had made the right choice. Loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. Letting go doesn't mean failure. It means you know your worth, and you're no longer willing to lease it out to people who don't. These days, the house is quieter, but it's not empty. It's peaceful. I wake up when I want, cook for one, and fill the walls with music again, my music. I've started writing, gardening, even joined a hiking group. Little things that remind me who I am when I'm not trying to save someone else. Mariah may never come back. And if she does, it'll have to be on different terms. Mutual ones. Built on honesty, not obligation. I'm open to that. But I'm not waiting for it. My door isn't locked. It's just no longer wide open to anyone who walks by. Because love, real love, isn't about what you give away. It's about who you become when you finally stop begging to be chosen. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you deeply loved because they refused to meet you halfway, this story is for you. Sometimes love means holding on, but other times it means stepping back so you don't lose yourself in the process. Drop a comment below if you've had to set boundaries with someone you considered family, and tell us how you reclaimed your peace. If this story hit home for you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas that aren't afraid to tell the hard truth. See you soon in the next one.